Just so you'll know, I'm gonna blow something up.
Okay. I did not expect that. Okay, all right.
Video game industry and the military have been intertwined from the start.
Places like MIT that were being funded to do this research introduced this revolutionary idea that computers could be used for fun.
So you've got Marine Doom on official government computers.
How are you holding up? You okay?
I'm a little shook.
War has always made for great gaming. From the earliest text-based battle simulators to the latest Call of Duty, we love games that give us authentic weapons and drop us into hyper-realistic battlefield experiences. But while our favorite video games let us play soldier with the most cutting-edge gear, the truth is, gaming as we know it wouldn't even exist without all the military technology that it was built on. In the next 2 episodes of Reset, we're taking a look at the untold story behind the US military's relationship with the video game industry, and finding out how the Pentagon is using video games to recruit, train, and treat the servicemen and women of today and tomorrow. The relationship between the military and the video game industry is intertwined right from the start.
Electronics for combat means new concepts, new tools, new weapons.
The video game industry actually emerged out of military context and military funding.
Corey Mead studies the relationship between the military and the video game industry.
The video game industry is built on technologies that were funded for military research. Things like advanced computing graphics or the internet or 3D environments. And it was the computer engineering students at places like MIT that were being funded to do this research that developed the first video games just for their own entertainment. They had kind of that hacker spirit. Space War is considered by most to be the first video game. It was developed in 1962 by a group of engineering students at MIT. They were doing research into space warfare as a Cold War response by the United States against Russia's launching of the Sputnik satellite.
By today's standards, or even 1980 standards, Space War's graphics are not much to look at. But it was one of the first times that programmers used computers for something other than crunching numbers or modeling warfare scenarios.
Space War introduced this revolutionary idea that computers could be used for fun. It's out of that the video games industry emerged.
By the 1970s, the military's computer technology had crossed over into the private sector. It had gotten small enough and affordable enough to fit into one of these: a video game arcade cabinet. And the game that marked a new step forward in the relationship between the military and the video game industry was Atari's 1980 hit, Battlezone.
Specific forward thinkers in the military saw Battlezone, which was a new level of complexity in terms of the environment and the kind of interactive play, and they wanted to adapt that for training purposes.
Tanks are expensive. Artillery rounds for those tanks are also expensive. And training soldiers to operate those tanks, this is all really expensive. So why not modify Atari's wildly successful tank game, complete with the Periscope Viewfinder, to be the Army's own tank simulator for their newest weapon, the M2 Bradley fighting vehicle? Not a lot of details are known about the collaboration between Atari and the Army, and it isn't clear if Bradley Trainer, aka Military Battlezone, was ever used to actually train soldiers. But they did make at least 2 custom cases with modified Bradley artillery controls. And if you know where to look, there are copies of the game floating around online. While the game itself didn't wind up as being standard training protocol, computer simulators became an ever larger component of training American troops throughout the 80s. While kids in the US were fighting with their siblings over turns on the NES, the military was developing training networks that would eventually lead to one of gaming's biggest developments, multiplayer mode.
Log 2, Tally.
Steady!
Log 2, 4900, master armor.
SimNet was the military's first large-scale interconnected training network, which introduced this revolutionary idea that soldiers didn't have to be in the same place. You could have people all over the country, all over the world, training on the same simulation.
Ready to roll? Roger that. I'll call you in sight.
By 1989, soldiers were training on SimNet, just in time to prepare for the tank battles that defined the first foray against Saddam Hussein during the Gulf War. Military leaders credit network simulation training with keeping US casualty numbers low, and precise simulations of those battles were then used to drive training back home.
In the 90s, military budgets across the board were reduced because of the fall of communism.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
At just that moment, as it happened, the video games industry had reached a level where they had these incredibly advanced gaming systems that could be easily and cheaply adapted for the military.
Doom comes out in 1993 and shocks everybody. I can't think of a better way to put it than that. We'd played first-person shooters before. We'd played Wolfenstein. But Doom was fast and aggressive, and there were scary demons and unique monsters, and it had this soundscape that other games didn't have. And it had multiplayer in a way that other first-person shooters had not had before. If you could set up for computers, you could shoot your friends. And we had not played a first-person shooter that allowed us to do that.
And we have maxed out the hub. Woo!
Doom codified so much of what we think of as a first-person shooter.
The outer space setting and the undead enemy were a pretty far cry from what the US was actually doing at the time in places like Bosnia and Somalia.
Look over at the terminal tower.
But Doom could be modified, which made that Space Marine a perfect recruit for the actual United States Marines. In the mid-90s, the Marine Corps were dealing with cuts in their funding, which would make it pretty tough to afford developing a traditional warfighting simulation. So in 1995, they decided to get creative and issued an official mandate to find commercial, off-the-shelf video games that could be used to train Marines. Pretty soon, a small group at Quantico created a Doom mod, which became known as Marine Doom.
The Marines don't say, like, we can use this to replace live fire training, but they do say that Marine Doom is great for team building, and we will allow it to be played on Marine Corps computers.
Eventually, the Commandant of the Marine Corps issued an order saying that PC-based war games provide great potential for Marines to develop decision-making skills, and authorized Marines to use government computers for approved PC-based war games, including Marine Doom. And one can assume some games where you could actually aim up.
Where they go over there? Get them!
When the military funding started to dry up in the late 90s, partly because of reduced defense budgets, a lot of the technology companies and simulation makers turned to the video game industry to sell their products.
That PlayStation 2 you spent hours playing Vice City on? Well, one of the main developers for SimNet built its network engine.
Idiot!
And as the gaming industry evolved and eventually surpassed the military in terms of developing cutting-edge graphics and engines, the relationship evolved too.
The military and the entertainment industry reached a new kind of bond when they started building actual research centers that were funded both by the military and by various entertainment entities to create new technologies or new applications of technologies that could potentially benefit the military, but would also be used for entertainment purposes, whether in video games or movies or other high-tech forms.
Or in other words, there's now kind of a cost-sharing arrangement between the military and the private sector, which means that the same tech that goes into a set of these can both help you play fun virtual reality games at home and help soldiers train for war. Coming up, I meet the tech geeks working in that shared space between the gaming industry and the Department of Defense, and check out how they're helping troops prepare for and recover from the the 21st century battlefield.
I just wish I could have said goodbye.
I wanted to get some more insight on what the connection looks like between the military and the video game industry today. So I've come to the University of Southern California's Institute for Creative Technologies, where they're taking the same tech that we use for video games at home and developing that into military applications.
We are working on military training simulations as part of the Synthetic Training Environment Project, the STE, and it allows us to use gaming technologies to rapidly prototype what a virtual training system could look like.
Arno Arnhold oversees all the technology and art that goes into creating the virtual humans and landscapes the ICT develops.
Somebody in the road. Stand by. Over.
And a lot of it is running on the same engine as games like Fall Guys.
So we can take a game engine like Unity, and we can use that as a basis to add military-specific training features on top of it. We can take a real town, create a virtual version of that, and then drop in different soldiers to start prototyping.
These synthetic training environment, or STE prototypes, are just one part of the nearly $3 billion investment the military made into virtual simulations in 2020 alone.
So as a soldier, you're being transported to a real city, and in that real city, you can encounter enemies that are being driven by AI behaviors.
US troops already use a plethora of virtual and game-based training tools, and the STE is set to bring them all onto a unified platform by 2023. But the ICT isn't only developing tech to train soldiers, but also to treat them.
This looks like Kabul. Oh.
Skip Rizzo is a pioneer of developing VR systems for psychological and cognitive treatments. For the past 15 years, he's been working on a VR-based treatment for soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder called BraveMind.
The goal of this is to help a person with PTSD to go back and in a safe place confront and reprocess these difficult emotional memories. PTSD is different than having just bad memories about hard things. Think about in your own life, something bad that happened. You felt horrible when it happened. But with PTSD, you have that same feeling that you felt right after, a month, 2 months, 6 months, a year.
On an average day in the US, about 20 veterans commit suicide. And since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, those numbers have only gone up.
We'll start off easy.
Okay. Yeah, start me off easy, huh?
Now, the things I would do in a therapy session would say, okay, what time of day was the event that you're going to talk about today? Was it in the morning?
Whoa.
Were there clouds in the sky? No.
Oh, so you can actually recreate what is in their memory.
Well, we mimic it. We're never going to do an exact replica.
Okay.
Just so you'll know, I'm going to blow something up.
Okay. Yo. I did not expect that. Okay, all right. So that's what this platform is here for,
Yeah.
It's actually rumbling. That kind of feels real. Wow.
We don't have our new smell prototype, but the smell prototype fits under the headset. And like when something blows up, you get a little puff of like gunpowder, cordite, maybe diesel fuel.
Whoa, what is this?
A dead.
Whoa. Is this what I think it is?
Yeah.
Damn.
That's about as far as we go. We don't believe we need to go full bore blood and guts. It's hard medicine for a hard problem, but scientific basis is to activate the fear and the anxiety and the stress, but in a safe place. And eventually, these stimuli no longer trigger this thing we call PTSD. You're always going to have a bad memory. We're not erasing memories.
But you got to go back through it first.
How are you holding up? Are you okay?
I'm a little shook.
BraveMind is now being used at some VA hospitals and military bases. Studies have shown that it works as well, or better than, more traditional treatments, and may appeal more to younger vets than talk therapy.
Who's hurt? How bad? Bill.
And Skip is also expanding it to treat sexual trauma experienced by military personnel, and potentially COVID survivors and first responders.
Let's start with learning how your body reacts to stress. When you encounter a threat to your survival, it's normal for your brain and body to experience stress.
We had this idea for what's called stress resilience in virtual environments, STRIVE. And STRIVE was conceptualized as, what if we did a better job on the front end preparing service members for combat emotionally?
Hey, this ain't a Disney tour. Everyone, keep your eyes and ears open.
Think about a 19-year-old that goes into the military and now they're running a squad and, getting shot at and seeing horrific wartime things. How do you prepare a 19-year-old or anybody for any of that?
He's dead. Well, this son of a bitch is gonna even the score.
So what STRIVE does is take all the content we built for the treatment tool and look at it as like the back lot at Universal Studios, where we can put people in stories, immersive narratives with a squad.
It's kind of like the story mode on a Call of Duty or something like that.
Exactly. But the difference is at the end, the crap hits the fan.
We're down. We're down. Oh my God! You copy. Over.
We model the 6 episodes we've built on stories we've heard from patients about the things that haunt them. Horrible, horrible things. But these are the things people get confronted with. Mm-hmm. So we build those events out where it ends on a bad note. But in the midst of the chaos, all of a sudden, you get the silence, people freeze in motion, and out walks a virtual mentor.
Let's have a talk. Truth is, you will face many situations worse than the ones you just experienced.
And he'll go through a whole thing of what's going on in the brain during these experiences.
Going into the science during the middle of the scenario.
Yeah, and that you're not a coward if you feel horrible. Here's what's going on in your body. And here is a methodology that might help you to cope with it.
I'll teach you ways to use your prefrontal cortex to get through these events and control emotions that can eat you up.
You're taking technology, which is going to prepare people for things nobody should ever have to see. That should shake somebody.
Absolutely.
This sounds wild. I don't know if we should want somebody to come back from that situation and feel okay.
And feel just like every business as usual. You have a great argument here. Are we building things that justify killing or make it easier to kill or to do bad things? These are hard questions. We don't want to turn people into emotionless automaton killers. But the reality is they will be in these situations. And how do we help them to be able to cope where they're not haunted for the rest of their life or they're not limited in what they can do with the rest of their life?
Luis Manuel Soto, age 23. May you rest in peace.
I think any effort we can make to reduce human suffering is the right thing to do. And if we can use technology to do it better, then I'm all in.
It's just hard, Doc. Real hard.
Coming up, the Reset Roundtable talks military-style shooters and gaming at Walter Reed.
What's up, y'all? We're back with the Reset Roundtable. We have a lot to get into. So for this time, I've got our Marine Corps veteran, Stephen Kiernan, Motherboard contributing editor, Matthew Galt, and the host of Waypoint Radio, Austin Walker. Thanks for coming on, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So I know that the first military-style shooter that I really played, I want to say was Counter-Strike, but I'm curious, what was it for y'all?
There was a sort of a simulator style shooter. I think it was just called SEAL Team 6. That was explicitly about the Navy SEALs. I remember being a young kid and thinking, now this is serious gaming. This isn't like huge explosions and car chases and this is what real war is like. And so I mean immediately the way the games industry presents war, it was already something that was happening to me as a young kid.
I think for me, it was Rainbow Six. Those first few Rainbow Six games, I think they started in 1998, and Counter-Strike is a year later.
In position. I think it's also in the Tom Clancy realm. I'd have to go with Ghost Recon, the first one. And it set up the trend of having the nondescript kind of Russians as the enemy, right?
Stephen, when did you join the Marine Corps? And if you could tell me about what was your time like in Marines?
Yeah, so I joined up when I was 17. I was super moto to join. Got my parents to sign that waiver so I could do it. I even graduated high school early so I could go to boot camp as early as possible. Deployed to Iraq, ended up getting blown up in an IED in 2008 in Fallujah, and then spent 2 years at Walter Reed going through physical therapy, learning how to walk again and use prosthetics and stuff.
When you were recovering, what were you doing?
Video games are really important to pretty much everyone there going through therapy, right? Because you're worn out and tired, so you get back to your room, you just need to relax. And that helps a lot of guys out, and it helped me out when I was going through it. Video games were like the one thing where I didn't need a handicap to play, right? I didn't need special equipment. So that was a big morale booster for me, and I know for a lot of guys as well.
It's interesting that you've identified this way in which video games were therapeutic for you in this unofficial capacity. You know, in the reporting Dexter did for this episode, I know, he looked at ways in which the military are using things like video games directly as a therapeutic. I think in this case it was exposure therapy, basically via VR. And I'm curious how you feel about that stuff, Stephen.
I think it's great. I think they should definitely do it. Talking about exposure therapy, I'm not sure I would want to, go through that again, even in like a controlled, safe environment. Like, it's weird, like with video games, I'm able to separate it and I realize, okay, this is a video game, but with like movies, I can't do it.
It wraps around to me to something else that Dexter, you learned about in the episode where you were talking to the doctor who runs the VR clinic. He was helping to develop technologies that would not only treat PTSD, but would attempt to prevent it from developing in the first place. If such a priming system was perfected, fundamentally changes the calculus of when and where we are comfortable going to war and under what conditions. You're opening the door to a lot of things you cannot predict, and I think you just have to be very confident that you're ready to open that door before you do.
We can speculate all day, but we actually don't know what effects that's gonna have. There is a lot in there that we've only just begun to unpack, and we can go on for this for hours, but we got to get going, and I want to thank y'all for joining me, especially you, Stephen, for sharing your experience with us. And all of you, definitely come back next time for more Reset, the Unauthorized Guide to Video Games.